Hello candidates, you're most welcome to this first session of the continuation of our second term's workbook. Previously, last time, we looked at the early traders and their major reasons of coming. We looked at the Arabs. I know this lesson following was a bit clear. That is why I moved straight away to the reason for their coming, and particularly, we are going to look at slave trade. When we look at slave trade, there are some terms, key information that you need to know. Slave trade, slavery, and a slave. This may not be new because you looked at it in P5, P6. So to begin with, slave trade, this was the buying and selling of human beings as slaves, or buying and selling of people. That was the kind of trade during that time. And slavery is the state of being a slave. You are aware that in P6 and P5 we said that when the Arab traders came to Uganda, East Africa, basically they came to look for manpower, slaves. And their reason is as to why they came to carry out this kind of trade. Number one, there was need for cheap labor to work in the mines and plantations. There was also need for domestic workers. These slaves were taken to work as domestic workers. Like currently, we do not have slaves, but we have housemaids, wardens, and whatever. But this was got just on a mutual understanding. But for slaves, it was by force. 3, traditional chiefs and kings wanted to sell these people in order to get income. Number 4, or part D, there was need to use slaves to carry goods as means of transport. During that time, there was no reliable means of transport. So you could find that these people could be captured, and even alongside selling them, they were used as means of transport to carry the ivory and other items of trade during that period. So they could move long distances from, for example, Uganda up to Mombasa port on foot, carrying those items of trade. So, what were the methods used by these people to get slaves? Number 1 was through raids. They could move and go and invade any part where they suspected those people to be. 2, through intertribal wars. They were encouraging or fueling intertribal wars so that they could get the war captives. Then by kidnapping and capturing the lonely travelers. That is why people used to move in groups. So if at all they could find you moving alone, it was risky. You could be captured and taken to serve slavery. Then buying war captives from the kings and the chiefs. Now in East Africa, remember in P6, there were those notorious individuals or slave traders in East Africa, and these among others included a man called Ahmed bin Muhammad, whose nickname was Tip Tipu. Then we had Fundi Kiri. We had Musiri. That information, you have it in the P6 workbook. Other individual groups. These ones were trading with other groups who came, the foreigners. This was included the Arabs themselves and the European traders. So the slave markets or slave trade markets in Africa, we had the largest one in the world, which was Zanzibar. Then the largest one in the interior of East Africa, which was Tabora, whose local name was Kaze. So if at all they talk about Kaze, do not be confused. They are talking about Tabora. And this one was found in Tanzania. So that was the largest slave market in the interior, whereas this one, Zanzibar, was the largest in the whole world, and it was located on the coast of East Africa. Then we had Timbuktu in West Africa, that was Mali. Then Goa Islands in Senegal, These two are found in West Africa. Now, what were the results, impacts, effects of slave trade in Africa? They were both positive and negative. The positive ones were those good things. So it led to the growth or rather development of some chiefdoms and kingdoms in Africa. 2, some African kings and chiefs became rich. 3, led to the development of coastal towns in Africa, where slave trade was taking place. Whether West Africa or East Africa, those coastal towns had to develop. On the other hand, we had the negative effects. Those were the bad things that were brought as a result of slave trade. It led to loss of life among Africans. Of course, candidates, I need to tell you, it was not someone's wish to be taken. These people were just captured and got by force. So it had to involve that kind of struggle. So it led to loss of life. It led to destruction of property. All the captives could be, their homes could be destroyed and even burnt. If you could watch that film of Kinta Kinte, there is that history of West Africa, Kunta Kinte, you could see the negative effect. It led to loss of labor in Africa as our strong men were taken to serve as slaves in those foreign countries. It also led to famine. The old people could not dig. So as strong men were taken, and uncalled for famine had to crop in. Then it led to intertribal wars in Africa. As those tribes were fighting, now the war captives could be got, and in a bid to sell them, they had to continue. And this was being fueled by these foreign traders, by providing them ammunition to go and fight so that they get for them the slaves. Now, there was a major reason why African leaders never wanted to end slave trade. The major one was it was profitable. They were gaining a lot from them. Therefore, it was profitable to them. However, time came after the foreigners realizing the negative impact it had on the Africans. Slave trade had to come to an end. And there were agreements, or rather treaties, that were signed. This is just a summary, but the information is there in the workbook, detailed information, both in P6 and P7. So they were among the treaties. We had the Moes Bay Treaty. This was signed in summary. I'm just summarizing. It was signed to end the selling of slaves outside the Sultanese territory. Remember, when we looked at Zenji Empire, it was not an empire because each state had its own leader. So these foreigners had to move from state to state to sign agreements with those people to end slave trade. So this one was signed to end slave trade or selling of slaves outside the Sultanese territory. Then another treaty was Hamilton Treaty. Hamilton Treaty. These treaties were named after those people, the foreigners who signed them. You look for the details in the workbook. So this Hamilton Treaty was signed to stop the transportation of slaves from the East African coast. Therefore, it had to stop. Then the last one, which was signed, was Ferrari Treaty. Ferrari Treaty was signed to close all slave markets in East Africa. Therefore, that marked the end of slave trade when they signed the Ferrari Treaty. When you look at that kind of work, the activity is on page 48 to 49. I'm encouraging you, boys and girls, keep on reading. I'm at times disappointed with those who post blank questions, yet the information is there in the notes. Thank you for being good children. Continue being good and hardworking. Thank you. To meet again.